Hello and welcome to another News for Your live stream brought to you by Freedom Media WA. In this stream, we're going to take a look at the electoral reforms WA Labor government wanted, but you may not know about, all hidden in plain sight and designed to target minor parties as a result of onerous registration rule changes. Joining me in the studio today is a special guest for you, Cam Tinley, for this discussion. Cam, thanks for your time and welcome to the Freedom Media studio.
Thanks, Lindsay. Really appreciate it.
So that now we're going to set the scene a little bit, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background here and really just give you an idea of where this has come from. And in a seismic political shake-up back in September 2021, the ex-Premier Mark McGowan, the now Roger Cook-led WA government, having seized control of West Australia's Parliament, orchestrated the most significant overhaul in the 132-year history of the upper house known as the Legislative Council. Enter the stage the Electoral Equality Bill. Now, if you're thinking equality in the casual sense, think again, because the Oxford Dictionary defines it as a state of being, equally in status, rights or opportunities. But here's the kicker. This landmark bill on electoral reform passed through Parliament with the subtlety of a bulldozer. There was little debate, there was scant referrals to the upper house committees, all a far cry from the promised gold standard of transparency touted by ex-Premier Mark McGowan. The WA Labor government has been the oldest political party in West Australian history. It has 120 years, I should say, plus in government. Before the reforms, this was the lay of the land. 75% of WA voters live in suburbia, while a mere 4% reside in mining and pastoral regions. Yet despite this glaringly urban majority, a staggering 17% of the upper house members hailed from regional areas. So when you crunch the numbers, regional votes wielded a whopping 6 times more power than their suburban counterparts. And this is the lopsided status quo that ensured that these changes that we're about to talk about. So welcome WA Labor government winds of change, or shall I say the storm that blew away the old guard of regional voices being heard, as the bigger pool of city MPs, including candidates, will now likely see they're going to do what suits, and West Australian regions are going to be left behind. There's a lot to these reforms that you need to know about, and before I bring Cam Tinley into a deeper discussion on this, I'm just going to play you a short package back to March 2021, just before the last election, Mark McGowan, and where he made his position clear on the current regional seats in the upper house. Let's have a look.
If Labor is returned next Saturday, will you pursue electoral reform in the upper house?
It's not on our agenda. I've answered this question many times. It's not on our agenda. We care deeply about country WA, and the issues of jobs, health, education, important infrastructure are the sorts of things that we will implement.
There is a difference between not being on the agenda and committing not to do something, as Labor did with the gold royalty increase. So, will you commit? Are you committing?
I'll be clear again. It's not on our agenda. Enhanced regional representation would continue, and this is just another smokescreen by the Liberals and Nationals.
Do you think electoral reform in the upper house is something that parties ought to take to an election before ever trying to implement it?
No, as I said, it's not on our agenda.
So, can I take from that the Labor Party isn't going to be doing it?
As I said, it's not on our agenda. We support enhanced regional representation.
To go back to the question though, I mean, how significant is electoral reform in the upper house?
As I said, it's not on our agenda. We support enhanced regional representation.
Yeah, I understand that, Minister.
Yeah,
so,
I've answered your question.
I guess the question is, do you think it's a matter that it should be taken to voters before ever being implemented?
As I said, it's not on our agenda. We support enhanced regional representation.
So there we go. Clayton, just go audio on. So there we go. Going back to the question, Cam, you've just seen that package. That was 1 week before the 2021 election. Can you talk about the reforms that Mark McGowan said was not on his agenda what they did in the upper house in Western Australia?
Yeah, there's a lot. First of all, thanks, Lindsay. First of all, the Labor Party knew that what was going to happen. They particularly focused on the mining and pastoral area, and a lot was made of the fact that the Daylight Saving Party got elected with 92 votes. That was significant because they could easily run to the press and say, you know, we can't have this situation, somebody getting elected with 92 votes or whatever it was, close to that. But you can't get elected with 92 votes. You have to have 14% of the vote, a quota, to get in. Now, the reason Daylight Saving got in was because Labor and the Greens both gave them their preferences. They knew what the outcome would be, so it was very disingenuous for the Premier to say, to promote this, and the West Australian did as well. There was supposed to be a big article in the West Australian by Peter Law, and everybody, all the minor parties were waiting for it, and it just didn't appear. So the West were in cahoots with the Labor government to make sure that you had this situation where Daylight Saving Party got in, and then the ball started. They got the ball rolling, and to bring all these changes in, and they're horrendous for the minor parties. They're very onerous, and you know, there's a lot we have to go through. And the 19 parties got wiped out for a start as soon as the new changes came in, and I think only 7 are back on board. So we've got about a dozen parties that got a lot of votes at the last election, about 20% that aren't there.
So just want to talk about that. When you mention 19, so the 2021 election where Mark McGowan had his landslide win, the Labor government, what you're referring to, there was 19 parties that the people of Western Australia had an opportunity to vote in. You ran in that election, Cam. You formed a party, and I might say that for the information of viewers, it's not your first time, it's not your first rodeo. You've been trying to get the voice for West Australian people into WA Parliament as a minor party for a number of elections, including federal. But in that election, I think I clearly recall, you actually came 5th. You polled 5th in relation to that, and way more than the 92 or 98 votes, whatever the Daylight Savings Party got as a primary vote. And that's 5th to Labor, Liberal, Nationals and Green. Then it was yourself, and then there was 14 other parties. You mentioned at the moment, currently as of this morning, we're just going to bring up what the current parties are right now, your choices for next year. And as you can see on the screen there, you have 7. The Animal Justice Party, the Australian Christians, Legal Cannabis Party, of course Liberal, Labor, Nationals and the Greens. That will be your only choice that you will have. Now ordinarily, Cam, part of the reforms looks at what was the previous cutoff that a party could register and qualify to go into the election, the time frame?
Really, all you had to do was be registered at the time that the writs were issued, and that was about a month before the election. So if you were fully registered, the last election, 2021, was March the 13th, so roughly the writs were issued about February the 10th. As long as you were registered by February the 10th, you were ready to go. And the reason that's significant is because when there's a lead up to the election, people are talking about politics, they're thinking about it, they're thinking who they're going to vote for and getting material, and they're in tune to what's happening. And so parties can, to get new members, they can go on membership drives, and people are already thinking about that. So that's the issue. But at the moment, nobody's thinking about elections because federal and state elections are a long way away. We've had council elections. Nobody's thinking about politics at the moment. And so it's a difficult time for people for minor parties to get elected, to get registered. And the registration closes on the 5th of February of this year, and that means having the 500 to submit on the 5th in a very difficult form. Yeah. So
I mean, it sounds simple enough, but let's actually just unpack that a little bit. Firstly, the McGowan government, in the prelude that you just saw in the package that you've just seen, said that it wasn't on his agenda. They didn't push it off to a parliamentary committee for substantial electoral reforms, they pushed it off to an independent person to adjudicate, which I believe was Malcolm McCusker, the ex-WA governor, who then touted that registrations for any party was possibly going to be moved back to 3 months before the election. Then I think in a final report it was 6 months, and then they settled on 12, which you're now saying is Feb 5. If a party is not able to get the 500 members in time, what does that mean, Cam?
Well, it means we can't run. We can't run at all. If we don't submit 500 members on the 5th of February, that's the deadline. And so you're
no provisions at all?
No.
So the 7 parties that we've just put up then, we might just bring that up again just to show the 7 current parties. This is from the West Australian Electoral Commission. As of this morning, these will be your choices if no other party then comes and registers in time. So that's a massive change. Hence you say through the Christmas period, it's going to catch a lot of people unawares with no options going forward.
That's right.
Cam, so coming back to what Mark McGowan's talking about, and perhaps what the ABC reporter was saying at the time, the other significant changes in the West Australia, or what he didn't say, he said it wasn't on the agenda, regions. Where does it stand for regions in terms of the political voice, the number of seats in the upper house?
Yeah, well, it goes to 37. It goes from 36 to 37. So people will think, well, this is good for the minor parties, but there's a lot of reasons why it's not good for the minor parties, and we just saw then. You only have to get, instead of having 14.28% to get a quota under the old system, you only need 2.47 to get elected this time. But they've made a number of changes which make it very difficult to get that 2.47. And really, it's going to increase the votes that go to the major parties. Now, there's a number of parties that aren't registered at the moment that who knows whether they will, but it's a lot of votes they got combined. And when people don't vote for one minor party, they generally vote for another minor party. And so the minor parties can get about 30% of the vote. But under this system, the minor parties could get 40% of the vote and not get anybody elected. The reason for that is because the preferences aren't going to flow, because they've brought in rules to say that you're allowed to put a number 1 above the line, and that is going to count as a formal vote. Previously, a 1 above the line counted as a formal vote, but the preferences automatically flowed through to all the parties. So I've got a list here of mining and pastoral. Every party submits a list, and there's no votes get thrown in the bin. They go to somebody eventually. So every party is on there. But if you just have a number 1 and the votes don't go anywhere, the preferences don't go anywhere, all of the preferences for a minor party might get 2% of the vote. If people don't give a preference down the line, all those votes are going to go in the bin. And most parties do only get less than 1% of the vote. So mining and pastoral at the last election, only 11 parties got more than 1% of the vote, and so 8 got less than 1% of the vote. But combined, it's still a decent number of votes. And that's what's going to happen. Then you have other minor parties like the Australian Christians will get 2% of the vote, but if people are not necessarily going to vote for the Australian Christians out of a preference, it seems to be a very solid 2%. People aren't just going to say, oh, well, there's no minor parties, I'm going to vote for Australian Christians, because it's a very specific demographic that are going to do that. And so that's the problem we have. And so that's one of the changes. You can have a 1 above the line. The other changes that have been made, which make it very difficult, is that when you sign up to 500, previously you could do it online. You could have people, all you had to do was submit 500 names.
Just about everything you can do now, you can do on your phone then and there, register. That's right. For, the government have the free travel, the government I should say have the free travel. You can register for a smart line rider on your phone. Yeah. But this?
And now we're going back in time.
Right.
So what has to happen now is you have to complete your physical membership on a form which is called an FD15. This is provided by the Electoral Commission, have provided the FT. I put my party's name at the top there, which I was allowed to do, but everybody has to do a paper copy, and I have to submit 500 paper copies on the 5th of February as well.
The old wet signature.
Yes, that's right. And so the difficulty with that is, in this day and age, people don't expect to have somebody to arrive at their door or to meet up to fill out a form on a bit of paper, and it's not even a convenient thing, because a lot of people, we have various standards. I'm a teacher, and so you get various standards or neatness of neatness, and a lot of times people could put and it's very difficult to read on occasions, and so you're probably going to, the details are not going to be accurate, but if you're typing it all up and it's on a spreadsheet, it's all very easy to look at, and you can't make mistakes. People can make mistakes where there's email addresses have to go down here, phone numbers people muck up. I had somebody ask yesterday what a locality was, and it's a reasonable question. And the first one we got online, and doesn't it say suburb of town, it says locality, and people are confused with that. But that's the form. Everybody has to fill out one of these forms, and we need 500 of those, in 2 weeks' time. And so that's why, Lindsay, when you put up the graphic, and was it 7 parties?
Seven parties as of this morning.
And so you had 19 before. It's not like the other 12 are just not interested at all. It's just that it's so hard to do this, where before everybody could do it, and it's a democracy. So if people don't get the votes, they don't get the votes, but you don't want to exclude people just by having the bar set too high, and that's what we've got. We've got a lot of votes there. I've worked out that 11.5% of the voters voted for parties at the last election which are not there now. That is a lot. That's 4 members of Parliament.
So Cam, again, I just want to break that. Those watching the stream at home might actually be looking at and going, why are we talking politics and about we are in a pre-election year. The election is likely to be late Feb, early March next year, but we're talking about it now. Why? This Feb 5 cutoff is hard and fast. There's no rules around that. But then when you also look at, you mentioned the form and putting an incorrect number down, for example, or doing something like that. Where that comes in to play is, my understanding is, the Electoral Commission will audit your membership base, and if you fall below that, and that could be as simply as they can't get in touch with somebody to corroborate that you are in fact a legitimate member of a political party, they'll rub you off. So if you dropped below 499, then the chances are you're out, even if you got the 500. Is that how you see that?
It's not as bad as that. You have different electoral commissions, and I can say they're different quality and different levels of integrity. I think the Western Australian Electoral Commission is fantastic. As a minor party person, or even as a major party, they're very fair, and they want people to compete in elections, but they're hampered by the laws that have been brought in. They can't vary from the laws, but they are it's an excellent, WA should be proud of the West Australian Electoral Commission. The Australian Electoral Commission is a completely different ball game. They are very difficult to deal with, and I've had very unpleasant experiences with the Australian Electoral Commission. But the Western Australian Electoral Commission will allow you to correct, if you drop below the 500, you will have the opportunity to replace those members, which is very fair and reasonable. But if you don't submit 500 on the 5th, you don't get that opportunity.
That's it. It's all over.
That's it.
And then you held up a form. I can see right here it has community first party. So I mentioned 2021. You actually came 5th overall, which, notwithstanding some, I don't know what the word is, I don't want to say skullduggery, but some preference deals really should have seen you in, but you were out. That was 2021. Where are you at now, Cam? What's the urgency for you? Community first. I haven't heard of this party recently. It is you're taking a little bit more of a broader, diverse approach in relation to that.
Yeah.
So what are you trying to do, Cam? Where does this leave you?
As far as community first?
Yeah.
So
Are you seeking to run?
Oh yeah, we're definitely seeking to run. I've run in pretty much every election, state and federal, and we want to run in this election as well. So we do want to run as a community first party, and we've got to get our 500 members, and that's the issue, because we have to get 2.47% of the vote to get somebody elected, but with preferences you can do that. That's not an unreasonable thing to expect, that a party can get in as long as people continue to fill out the ballot paper. So would you like me to go into any of the what Community First is all about, or just talk?
Well,
I mean,
it's probably a good opportunity, because as it stands now, there is 7 which we've just put up there. You're seeking to be number 8. And I would just say, I mean, the people commenting there, again, we appreciate your comments. Thank you very much, for that. And I see, Sue, who has been a long-time member, putting up things like a Great Australia Party. The one thing is for certain is that you, Cam, I mean, this isn't your first election, and you've been pretty consistent with your messaging the whole way through. So let's talk about what you're trying to achieve.
Okay, first I can see a comment there from Jay Gase. I'm not a Freemason. That was there's an interesting one. Yeah, I'm just reading some of the comments there. As far as what we're all about, as far as we see it, the major parties, I'll go through the major parties. You have the Liberal National Party, and they look after the financial interests of the corporations and developers. After the corporations and developers also, but they also look after the interests of militant unions, not necessarily unions per se, but the ones that have the ability to go on strike and cause disruption or intend to go on strike. So they look after those people as well. The Greens don't really, they don't look after anybody's financial interests at all. In fact, quite the opposite. So what Community First want to do is look after the financial security of individuals and families, financial security and physical security. And all of our policies are related to those two things, financial security and physical security. Financial security, in our opinion, comes down to property rights. We have to have very strong property rights, and then have the ability for people to pay off and own their properties outright by the time they reach retirement age, and even if they don't, to build up equity. And that situation was available for people in my age group. It was very easy to get financially secure for people of my age group, and it's a tragedy that other age groups are not in that situation. When I first started working, everybody basically could live on a quarter-acre block. You could buy a quarter-acre block, and the government was involved with land development, or the government pretty much gave you when I'm talking about a quarter-acre block, I would say anything over 800 square metres. The government, and if you went on a high income, the government would give you a block of land on a quarter-acre block and a house. And over time, they appreciate, and there's a lot you can do with the land. You can provide food, you can be self-sufficient in food, you've got secure tenure, you can have your pets there, and life is, that's how the traditional West Australian way was. But now you have young families, and they're living in villas and units, and they're not going to be able to be financially secure as the previous generation was. So we are very keen on that. We don't want people, the private sector has been involved, and it really hasn't worked. We've got a housing problem at the moment, and when you have people getting pushed out of their homes, they have to relinquish their pets, which is an absolute tragedy. Kids have to change schools, or it's difficult to get to schools. You've got those sorts. The knock-on
effect is huge.
It's absolutely massive.
And the impact and the effect of that, we actually don't understand now, because there hasn't been enough transpired time that's gone by before we can really see the true and real measurable impacts of this.
And it's permanent. Like I taught at a school, I'll say the name of the school, I taught at Cecil Andrews College, and had students. I had one student in particular not behaving very well. It turns out that the student was living in a tent. The family was in a tent, not in a house. And you can imagine the trauma, and it would be almost a trauma that would go on for your whole life, that you've had to endure that. And nobody in Western Australia should be in that situation. We've got people living in cars, but you're talking about kids at school like that. It's just not on. And we've got plenty of land in WA to make sure that doesn't happen. So that's a big issue for us. The other issues, and I'm talking about somebody in the 60s now, my age is in the 60s, grew up in the 60s as well. The university, when I went to university, it was free. Even if you did medicine or law, it was free. And everybody thought, well, it's, fair enough. School was free. And that's not even a possibility now, but it is a possibility. If it was possible then, it's possible now. So universities should be free and TAFE. Schools should be free, or government schools, but now there's a move to private because people just don't think the government schools are good enough. But that's an issue. And we also think that subscriptions to sporting teams should be free. The government should pay subscriptions because they're part of the big part of the community, particularly in rural areas. They're just a huge part of the community, sporting teams, and we don't think that kids should not be participating in sport because their parents can't afford the fees. They might have a number of kids and the fees and the insurance is right over the top. And the government, we're investing in people.
I did see when you're talking about university that it was free in your time, and it's but now it's exorbitant costs. In prepping for this stream before you came in this morning, I was listening to the ABC, and I listened to that, so you at home don't have to. But they were doing interviews this morning saying that year 11 and 12 students, parents of those students are saying, with the cost of living prices and things like that, they need a $250 to $300 scientific calculator for their student to be able to complete successfully year 11 and 12, and they just don't know where they're going to get that. And they're talking, you mentioned living in tents and living in cars, and we're seeing more and more, sadly. They were saying that a private school education was costed out by the ABC this morning essentially about $195,000 for upper school education over the time. So what's that, year 7 now through to 12 is going to cost the family $195,000.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. I've heard higher figures than that as well. The other issue is, if the idea that people spend this money, a lot of people's idea is that their kids are going to get into university, and then the fees are there as well. I hear a lot of people saying, oh well, you have to pay it back over time. You've got to earn a certain amount and pay it back, but those debts don't go away. If you don't pay it back, and people might not care, but if you don't pay, that will come out of your estate. The government is going to get its money from those tertiary fees. If you don't pay for it, it'll come out of your estate, so they're going to get their cut. And people don't, the government's playing the long game with this. People might not see it, but that's the situation.
It certainly, so it's again, Cam, I just want to come back to, so it's clear, and there's more to talk about that you have here. You've mentioned property rights and more so individual. Are you looking for community first party? Do you have the particular property rights of forestry, mining, and those sort of, property / commercial type rights in its own?
Yeah, all of those things. We're particularly in the country. We particularly want to look after the timber towns, the fishing towns, coal mining towns, and farming towns. If you've got industries that are absolutely crucial to the town and they disappear, then you've got a flow-on effect, and you start losing police, you start losing schools, you start losing hospitals, and it just feeds on itself. So we've got a number of towns in WA, and there's no reason that they shouldn't exist for a very long time, particularly the timber towns timber is sustainable, despite what Labor might be saying. The fishing towns are being decimated by marine parks, and the people in the fishing, they think it's a food security issue. You've got people who might just have a small boat or even fish from the shore, but that provides food. I'm reaching an age where I'm talking about what used to happen, but I was born in 1960, and around 1960, people in Perth used to go prawning in the Swan River for food.
Yep.
Not
Just
as a
over
hobby.
the road from the Pagoda showrooms there.
This was not as a hobby. This was a fun thing to have with a few glasses of wine.
Not back in the 1960s.
Yeah. And that was people's food. They needed those prawns to survive. And if they thought that somebody wealthy was out there getting the prawns and just as a luxury, they're saying, hang on, we've got to feed a family here.
Yeah.
So people would fish for prawns, they would fish from the coast, and all of those things with these marine parks. I mean, you can't have a better source of food than freshly caught fish. And the Labor Party are making that very difficult. And the farming towns, we've got to look after the farmers. Coal mining towns as well, they will just, well, there's only one, that'll disappear.
Well, as Matt's just saying now on their Goodbye Collie, Goodbye Alcoa, which we saw announced last week, and probably contributing about $650 million to the WA public purse. Sorry, Cam, for jumping in. I'm just going to pick up on a comment that Steve said. And so it seems that he's been able to join the comments there. He's asking, what is your web address? So just while Steve's still there, we'll probably just, Cam, can you talk to that?
Well, we've had the web address, it's not going to, we do have a web address here, it's on the membership form, but there's not going to be any, much there. But the web address is communityfirst.party. But it's just getting changed at the moment, so you're not going to find a lot of information there. Most of the information is going to be put on Facebook from now. Yeah. But unfortunately, if I had have been looking at the screen, I would have been able to answer a lot of these questions.
That's okay. I'm trying to pick them up. As
that would be good.
I'm just going to clarify there. So essentially, because I do know in reaching out to you.
Can I just
talk
about eating bugs? People will not believe what Tyson Foods have done. They're talking about this eating bugs. What they envisage, and people are not going to believe this, they not only want us to eat, it sounds silly to even talk about it, but to eat bugs and to eat crickets and insects. But they want to produce the bugs by having flies consume sewage. Flies consume sewage, human waste, and then feed the flies to the crickets or the insects, and then we eat the crickets or insects.
Right.
So if you've got cricket grasshoppers or out in the field eating grass, well, we still wouldn't be very acceptable to have that as your source of protein. But at least it's you can they're eating something vaguely natural. But for flies to be eating sewage, and that's not something I've made up. That's they've
well, it's not. That. I mean, I've certainly I used to love the old Tim Tam, and I was quite partial to that. But I think if you go and actually play well, here's a little project. Go down to Coles because Woolworths aren't supporting Australia Day celebrations. Have a look at the back, or even better still, a Farmer Jack's or an IGA or something like that. Look up, take a photograph of the back of a packet of Tim Tams and go and Google the ingredients there. The bugs are already in there. I just want to come back to Catherine. Catherine, thank you very much there. She has put www.communityfirst.party. Now, I do just want to clarify that because I did know Cam, so you have got a website built, but unfortunately due to a tech issue, that's not going to come online until probably about the 1st of Feb.
That's right.
But you do have, which you've been frantically working on in the past sort of 48 hours, you've got a landing page, and that is actually, if you type in the URL, community numeral 1 st.com.au. That will take you to a landing page where you will be able to open up the membership page, as well as open up the email that where you can then go and email Cam. So it's community numeral 1.
It's got to be numeral 1.
Yeah, it has to be numeral
Community First is we can't use that name with FIRST because that is a name of a commercial a bank. So we can't use that name, so it has to be Community 1ST.
And good odd, thanks to Tony Galorti. Spudshed is definitely has got plenty of Australia Day merch. Thanks very much, Matt, there for that comment. And I just want to say you can't use Community First, Cam, because this is part of the other reforms that they've introduced. Previously, you could have had, and there was, I think, in WA, the WA Party or the WA People's Party or something of that nature, but you're now prohibited from using 2 capital letters and just every possible scenario that has been done in the past has been shut down.
Exactly, it's very sinister. So what you have previously, if you wanted to change the name of a party, you could have a committee meeting or an AGM, change the name of the party, and then say to the Electoral Commission where the party has been changed, it's been approved by the AGM, and then they'll ring up the members and that's gone. But now if you want to change the name of the party, you've got to get all the members brand new form, do the 500 all over again, if you want to change the party's name. So that's the first thing, no capital letters. So ours in the past have been capital, even the Nationals are capital letters, but that will have to change. But one party, the DLP, Democratic Labor Party, has been around for 80 years, and they're not going to be able to use that name either unless it's been approved by Labor. How can you be in a situation where the Labor Party has to give approval for a party that's been around for 80 years to use that name, and they'll just knock that in their head, and Liberal Democrats, well, they're going to have to change their name as well because the Liberal Party is allowed to complain about Liberal being in the name.
Well, that happened just before the federal election, I think, and the federal Liberal Party was successful in dropping that. Thanks, Shane, for jumping straight onto that. You've nailed it absolutely. Community number 1 st.com.au. It is rough and ready, but that's only because of the unfortunate tech issue that you haven't been able to rule that out. So well, let's just look at that particular comment there. Catherine, no capital letters, doesn't that rule out the 3 capital letters? So we are talking state West Australian electoral reforms, which, whilst they might form part of or have the same policies of the Australian Labor Party, here they're actually registered as the Labor Party. So so that's the reason behind that there. So there really is a sense of urgency that with some of what there's plenty of things and policies that you would be more prepared, more than prepared, I guess, if people have questions. The email address is contact@communityfirst.com.au, which is live and active. That's the same email address that you could download a membership form.
And they can ring me up. People can ring me up if they're not sure about anything.
So I just want to let's talk about a few of the potential, the party, your party, some policy principles that.
A lot of this stuff goes back to how Perth and Australia was 60 years ago, and it worked. I mean, nobody was in any doubt that Australia was the best country to live in, and we knew we had the best education system, the best health system, the best way of life. We all knew that. We had a very low crime rate. People didn't lock their doors. But what you did have were fences, not necessarily picket fences, or they could be wire fences, but people had fences around their property. So even though there was a low crime, if anybody was going to break in, they had to cross that barrier, and it was a psychological thing. Now houses are open. But you had a police station pretty much in every suburb. In Perth, you had a police station in every suburb, and they would be very particular about making sure crime was low in their suburb. And that's one policy we want to bring in. a police station in every postcode, not in every suburb, that's going a bit far, but in every postcode we want to have a police station so they will know the locals and people will actually know the police. And we used to have areas, well, Wanneroo used to be a country town, Armidale as well, so they had their own police stations who used to look after their areas. We want to have that. We want to have schools. I've been a teacher for 40 years. It was pretty well known that 800 students was the optimum number of students in a high school. What you had was schools that on the old H block, Scarborough, Governor Stirling. You can see, people know the old H block schools and they were everywhere in Perth, and they could only fit 800 students in. And now you've got schools that are over 2,500 and other schools that are empty. You know, what we want to do is have high schools where anybody can get a good education, going to their local high school. They don't want to cross boundaries. They don't have to play games to try to get into one of the good schools, because they were all good schools back then. And so we want to have that situation where people can have faith in their local schools and know that their kids are going to get, you know, a fair chance of getting into uni by doing that. Also, we want to make sure that trading hours are not deregulated. The Liberal Party is talking about deregulating trading hours. There have been people banging on about this for decades, but that is not a family-friendly situation.
It really kills the mum and dad.
It does.
These electoral reforms kill minor parties, and deregulating trading hours kills the mum and dad, the corner delicatessen, things like that.
Yeah, that's right. Basil Zemplis is sort of acting like a premier in waiting at the moment. He's a big fan of unregulated trading hours. It's absolutely ludicrous. You know, some of the arguments that people read, you know, as if people are going to come from Europe and go to Coles on a Sunday morning, and that's going to be a thing that they really look forward to travelling to Australia to do, and it's just ludicrous. They don't even have deregulated trading hours in Paris, so why would people think that we should here? So they're the main issues. It's going to be, and also when I talk about physical security for individuals and families, we're talking. That's just not a situation with violence. We're also health-wise as well. Make sure that people have the ability to look after their own health and make decisions concerning their own health. And so that they're the things we're going to be big on. But all of them are related to financial security and physical security. And that's been neglected at the moment because the main parties are looking after their donors. And that is a real problem.
And it comes back to, you know, to just to clarify those that may have jumped in again, part of the reforms, the regions are gone. So if you want to consider just picking up what you've just said then, Cam, my observations of all of that is, and I've been through the past couple of weeks, you know, just looking at these reforms during the Christmas break, of all things to do, reading Hansard dating back to the debate 2020-2021 on this. And you know, even Liberal and Nationals, the Greens, the likes, have highlighted in the debate that John Quigley says one state, one vote. That was his catch cry for this, but regional representation is gone, and the major parties will be looking to put those that would campaign better than a person who's lived in a country town, has a profile, understands, the people can go and see them, and now potentially that's not going to happen. You could have somebody sitting in Perth representing those that live up in Kalgoorlie.
Yeah, everybody will be in Perth, all those local members, and it was put, the ABC journalist knew that we showed earlier, he knew that they were going to bring these reforms in, and he knew that Mark McGowan was lying. He knew that, so that's why he kept banging on the same question, and Mark McGowan was giving the same answer over and over. I'd been to community events, and the Labor Party members were standing up saying, you know, we are going to get these reforms through. They were all saying it. They were all fanatical about this one vote, one value, and pushing it. And unfortunately, people in the country areas, and this is the tragedy of it, people in the country areas believed the ALP would look after them. And as soon as it got in, you had the live sheep export situation, the fishing changes, the gun ownership changes, one after the other. And the people in the country just swung and voted Labor in such massive numbers. People in the country and the wheat belt, people in the wheat belt, the swings to Labor were in 20% in most of those wheat belt towns. Absolutely staggering. And now we're in a situation where they're never going to have representation again because of the mistake that they made.
And I see Catherine's question, it's still at the top there. When were these laws passed? Absolutely 100% spot on there, Catherine. And it's a word that you've mentioned in your comment. So it's in a time frame at the peak of things that have transpired in the last couple of years. Don't want to say the word on this stream for fear of censorship. But I guess whilst people were at home, not able to go to work, not able to go and enjoy life as we knew it back then, Mark McGowan was using the numbers to ram all of this stuff through, and people were concerned about not seeing loved ones and not being able to go to funerals and all of these type of many things that have been experienced back in sort of late 21, mid to late 2021. That's when they were snuck through. So some plenty of comments there. Cam, you mentioned Greens really aren't supporting the economy and West Australian people in terms of energy. I did notice he withdrew it, and that's Brad Petter. So firstly, I did note last week he's announced that they tend to field, there's no need to mention candidates at this stage. That's not the deadline.
No.
But they have announced that they are going to run 5 candidates. So Greens are looking to ramp up. But he was seeking to introduce a bill that talks about disconnecting, and we've seen this on the East Coast last year, with the gas reservation policy here for West Australian people. I mean, the Burrup Peninsula is an abundantly, rich resource of natural gas to West Australian people. He wants to stop gas connections to new homes. Do you have anything that talks about energy or anything of those?
Yeah, well, we are in favour of coal mining. We think that coal has a legitimate future. People think that is a ridiculous thing to say. First of all, Brad Pettit only got into Parliament, he only beat me for that last spot in South Metropolitan Province because the Liberal Party, when they submitted their paperwork, gave him their preferences. I make a distinction, and I'm not saying the Liberal Party gave their preferences to Brad Pettit ahead of me, because when the Liberal Party voted on where their preferences would go, they said, the executive said that they wanted preferences to go to me personally. But when the paperwork was submitted after that election, it had Brad Pettit ahead of me, which was not the instruction that was given to the people who were supposed to provide the paperwork. That meeting was on a Friday, and then things changed on the weekend, and the paperwork was submitted on Monday. So Brad Pettit's lucky to be making any statements. He shouldn't even be in Parliament. It was only the Liberal Party doing that which allowed Brad Pettit to get in. But we can't, the situation is ludicrous, where people are saying that coal generates carbon. Pretty much that's what they're saying. But we're talking about carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is not carbon. It's needed for everything. And people are saying, but on the left, are saying, well, nuclear is an option. I mean, you can't have a more environmentally unfriendly substance than radioactivity, any radioactive substance. And that is not a solution at all. We think that coal mining should be going for a long time, and we cannot see a problem with it. I mean, this has been a recent issue where people are saying coal is such a terrible thing. Well, it just isn't. And so we're in favour of coal, we're in favour of gas, and we think that we can have a future. People think we're going to be having electric cars powered by windmills, and everybody's just going to go on living a nicely with under that situation, or they're going to be powered by solar panels or tidal energy. I mean, it's just ludicrous. I mean, nobody's saying anything. It's just absolute lunacy.
Yeah, I think that there's plenty of discussions out there saying in a Western democracy, or any democracy around the world, that they just haven't achieved sustainable energy, period. So so there we go. We've been talking about some of the electoral reforms that ex-Premier Mark McGowan snuck through Parliament back in sort of mid to late 2021, and they will make it incredibly difficult that any party that's not currently registered, there is only 5, or perhaps might just bring up that particular, this is the state of play as of this morning with political parties. So there you go. That is your choice. And if people don't, if they don't like what you just see on that screen there, Cam Tinley has been talking about an option for the Community First Party. But Cam, you need them to do. Let's just narrow this right down. What are you asking people to do between now and what is the 5th too tight? 4th?
Oh yeah, the 5th is too tight. That's when the forms have to be into the Electoral Commission, and I have to submit a list of names. I have to be able to collate them and have a list of names of 500 people on a database, which I submit at the same time. So even if I got them on the 1st of February, it's really cutting it. It'd just be inputting names over the weekend. So we just need them absolutely within the next two weeks, and it's got to be a physical form. We've got to fill out the form and then send it in, scan it, and then send it to the email address which is on the form, and
Okay.
then I'll get that.
Liberal and Labor, I just want to cover off there. You know, they have the membership fees are sort of going through the roof. And Cam, you're offering membership to your party simply because if you don't get the 500, there's going to be no option for West Australian people at the next election next year. Is that one of the reasons why?
To give people the option.
Yeah, that you're not charging. I mean, I think Liberal are up to, you know, their top level membership about $275 to join the Liberal Party.
Yeah, I mean, but it's a very expensive party to be a part of, the Liberal Party. I was a member of the Liberal Party for a long time, and just couldn't keep going with it. But it's a very expensive thing. They're really dragging money out of their members. There's no, and it shouldn't be the case, there's no membership fee with our party, and there won't be in the future, and there's no need for any party to charge memberships. And these big major parties, they get more than 4% of the vote. They get massive funding as well, government funding, taxpayer funding.
Well, it's a good thing that you've brought that up. I just want another story that I was working on. I'm just going to touch on a couple of things. You may be aware that one of the reforms that they are talking about is the returns of political donations. Now, previously there's been a 12 to 16 month lag in that. They're now proposed every 3 months they have to do these reforms. The WA Labor and Nationals and Greens and also Liberal have just disclosed their 2023 return, their political donations. So that can be anything from 14 months ago from now. WA Labor had about $6.7 million in donations, where 75%, Roger Cook and Rita Scaffiotti came out last week refusing to disclose where those political donations came from. And Liberal essentially no worse, about $4.2 million that these parties in Western Australia raised to campaign to keep the duopoly going, and there's about $1.9 million. The whole cash for access has come under question. That is dining with a WA MP. I mean, you're obviously not proposing anything of that.
No.
One of the other reforms is it was 200,500. There was a loophole that you could come under the federal of 14,500, but they're now trying to bring it back to 1,000. Of course, the big parties are opposing that, or did oppose that.
Yeah, that's right. It's just incredible the incentive to to get these donations. It's and the property developers. It's illegal in New South Wales for property developers to donate money.
And Ron's comment just there saying, and that really, Ron, you've summed it up quite well. That they've dumbed us down to the point where we're voting for our own existence. And essentially, not so much dumb, but you have to consider mainstream media and their role that they play in relation to this as well. The communication of the electoral reforms has been pretty much pre-existent, or nil, I should say. And also, including last week, when they announced the date when the writs were going to be issued 12 months before, there's been no press communication around that. You need to go on the WA Electoral Commission. So, stop voting for mainstream parties in favour of conservative, not liberal, or not liberal, and I guess you're meaning independents. Independents, Cam. Can I just ask you to just touch briefly about independents and the electoral reforms? What would happen if an independent was to go on contest the election?
Previously, an independent could just pay a nomination fee and go on, but now you need in excess of 100 signatures to be able to run as an independent.
Yeah.
And just also that's a handicap. Something we haven't mentioned that I forgot to mention. If you want to run in the upper house, in 2021 to run in the upper house, above the line cost $500. You had to put $500 up to run.
Mm-hmm.
This time it's $10,000. So to go from $500 to run in the upper house to $10,000.
Wow.
10,000. So that's another 10,000 we're going to have to come up with just to be able to run. And the whole process comes out of the public purse anyway. Why would minor parties have to come up with 10,000? And a lot of the minor parties, they've got an issue and they've got a constituency and they want people to have the opportunity to vote for them. And to have to come up with $10,000, and that's just in the upper house. Then, people run in the lower house, that's additional cost as well. So it's pretty prohibitive.
But you're also looking at the concept, and it was well drilled into people. There was a lot of awareness at the last federal election that are voting above and below the line. An independent below the line, essentially, you now have to number all of the boxes. You can't just number. I think it was 12, up to 12. So if 25 independents run, well, you now have to number 25 boxes, otherwise it's invalid, make an error, it's informal. And also, historically, about only 3% of people in Western Australia, looking at the numbers, Cam, and you're a numbers person, have actually voted successfully below the line. So
yeah, and another figure is that between 98% of the public who voted Liberal or Labor put a number one above the line. 98% of people have done that, just one number above the line. Only 80% of Green voters put a one above the line, so 20% they just did their own thing. But the overwhelming majority of the public, close to 99%, in some regions it was more than 99%, just a one above the line. And they are going to do that again. And most people do that, but they are going to be, for minor parties, they're just going to go straight in the bin, and they're just going to count the votes that, if people can get a quota. And,
Yeah, and sorry, Cam, to jump in there. Cheerio, Sue. Thank you for joining, and hopefully, if you have any questions, shoot an email off to Cam. You'd be happy to answer that. Yeah. Catherine's asking, where does the $10,000 go?
Just goes into State Treasury.
Okay, there you go, Catherine. There's your answer right there. But all of this, I guess, that you would have, and you would be no stranger to raising funds, because this isn't your first time in doing this. But all of this means for nothing if you don't get the 500 signatures.
That's right.
So on Facebook, I know a lot of people don't like using it, but we find that's where we get our biggest reach. You do have a profile on there, Community First, the numeral 1 on Facebook. You can find the email address. You can find a contact telephone number. You can find a link to your Community First registration party. And more importantly, hopefully you will be able to send that form post-haste. Cam, can people give you a page a like while they're there?
Oh, sure. That'd be great. And yeah, you're right, Lindsay. A lot of people have gone off Facebook altogether, but it's still a pretty powerful platform. And so if people could do that, that would be great. And then they'll be able to get the membership form off there. So I really appreciate these people that have written the comments in.
Yeah.
But
if people want to help you, Cam, if people want to help you, you're happy to have the conversations with them?
Oh, for sure. But as you say, Lindsay, if we don't get 500 members, then all of this is, even if people don't agree with a lot of the things, people might disagree with some of these things. There's a lot of people have joined parties just to make sure they're on the ballot paper because they support the system. As somebody giving it a go and make sure that the major parties, and also if these votes, just a side thing, that these major parties, that's a fluid thing how much they get per vote. But if there's a lot of ballots that are getting exhausted, or informal ballots, they get more. It's calculated at the end of every election. It's not a fixed figure. And so they will get more and more. And there's just no stopping these major parties. They're funded by the corporations, they're funded by the developers, and then they get taxpayer money on top of that, and then they bleed their members dry on top of that. With the minor parties, they've got none of those advantages. Get 4% of the vote. It's only 4% of the, there's only 4 parties that are going to get more than 4% of the vote, unfortunately, unless there's a big drastic change in the way people see things. But, that's a situation we've got. And, all we can do is our best. And but for us to be able to participate, we just need 500 signatures.
That's really where it's at. We've been going for just over an hour now, talking about, with Cam Tinley, the West Australian electoral reforms that were snuck through Parliament in the dark of night. It's been a classic Labor technique or trick that they've done. We've seen many pieces of legislation that they've rammed through with little, next to no debate and parliamentary scrutiny. Thanks, Cliff, for your comments there.
Thanks. And thanks, Ron.
It would be
Ron
interesting. And you're saying, thanks, Ron, who says, may God bless your party. And it really is coming down. There could be a couple of parties in the wings that may be just sitting there. I would have thought this is even a little bit too close to cut to the wind to get this done. But there's not a lot of time to actually think about what am I going to do. And
even if minor parties can get up and they can get in, even if it's a party that people disagree with, if you can get control of if the major parties, of particularly Labor and Greens, if they get control of the upper house again, it would be even worse than this time. If people can imagine what they would do.
Can it get worse?
Well, that's the issue. And so, just out of common sense, people should support minor parties just so there's a break on the power that the major parties have.
So there we go. We've covered that there. If you have heard anything and you may want some questions, email Cam. And I'm sure that the time needs to be balanced between collating the numbers that are needed versus you've indicated to me you're prepared to do that. You're going to burn the candle at both ends, leading up to make sure that you get over the line. If you are considering that, all the options are there to go onto the Facebook page or go onto that temporary link download the membership page, and then more importantly, email that off post haste to Cam, because in 3 weeks' time, if you don't get 2 weeks' time,
yeah.
there you go, then as Cliff is saying, we're absolutely screwed. So, and I think...
no, you might... Anyway.
Yeah, there's no other way to put it. So, you know, I mean, it's the first time many people may actually feel that, you know, that they've probably never even been a member of a political party before.
And people think they have to, some people think they have to do something. All we have to do is get 500 to get registered. There's no, people don't have to do anything else.
Yeah, but your plan, once your proper website is up and running, due to a technical issue, that between now and next year, if you get over the line, you're looking to push out stuff and let people know.
Oh, yeah.
You're starting now, not the 5 weeks before. You know, that we kind of hear. You know, people will hear from you.
Yeah.
You're going to be pushing out regular updates. You know, if the party gets up on the line. So there we go. Again, yeah. If we don't, if Cliff's saying if you don't get up, Cam, we're all screwed. So thank you very much for your comments at home, and appreciate those. This has been a bit of a slow chat, looking at some of the electoral reforms in Western Australia. Cam Tinley, who has just spoken to you about an option for Community First Party, and in particular why the 1st of Feb is absolutely pressing. So thank you for the comments. Please, as I always say at the end of the stream, you know, if you've considered that this has been insightful, there may be some people that you want to push this out. You can do your part, and that is by liking and then sharing the stream so that this information gets out. That is my ordinary plea. Cam would have a different one, and that would be by the 1st of Feb that the people at home do.
Yeah, complete the form and email it in, and then we'll be on our way.
That's it, done. That's all we need to do. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for joining in on the live stream. And I always just say they don't like it sometimes, but you know, the graphics and everything that you've seen, it's taken a big thing to push this particular, as it does with every stream. Thanks for the team and the crew that are behind producing them. So if they want to call out their names, I'll say it on air. If not, they are there. Sorry, say again?
He doesn't get.
Yeah, thank you. Clayton there is there producing, and we have one other person there. No, she's not going to say anything, but there we go. And the graphics, which is this one right here. Let's go, Ellie. Trigger a graphic. There we go. There was Clayton doing a switch. Ellie on the graphics, and yeah. So they've brought this this stream for you, and wherever you are, enjoy the